Hello and welcome to this webcast from Foodservice Consultant Society International, FCSI. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Mike Jones. I'm the Editorial Director of Progressive Content and FCSI's Foodservice Consultant magazine. Many thanks to you for joining this webcast, which is addressing the future of food service in North America. This is the third in a series of FCSI webcasts looking at how each major geographical region is reacting to rebounding, rebuilding, and I'm afraid in some instances, very much retrenching from the catastrophic impact of COVID-19. This webcast is very kindly supported by our good friends Woodstone. And let me just get up their logo here. That is woodstone-corp.com, Unix North America, it's unix.com/US. And Multiterrier, it's multiterrierusa.com. So many thanks to those three brands for their kind support. I'm delighted to say that as we limited registration to this webcast exclusively to the first 100 signups, we have a full house today. The majority of registrants are from the US, but we also have a large number from Canada and Mexico, as well as folks from Brazil, India, Switzerland, France, and the UK. Our audience today is a variety of food service consultants, as you'd expect, but also operators, dealers, distributors, and equipment manufacturers. A few of you who tuned into the previous webcast looking at the Latin America region might notice one or two of the same generic slides used in that presentation, but otherwise this is very much focused on North America and its food service sector, with some very interesting examples of operators in North America doing very smart things to come out of the pandemic positively. The webinar will be presented by Global Data's Consulting Director, Mark Dempsey. I shall shortly hand over to Mark. He'll be presenting for approximately 30 minutes, and then Mark will be able to take some questions towards the end of the session. You can post questions to Mark during the session, so please use the questions column on the platform. I would ask that the questions are not too specific or too narrow, but if they are about broad food service trends, opportunities, potential challenges in the North American food service market, Mark will be very happy to answer those questions at the close of the session. Please also, during Mark's presentation, use the chat function on the platform and tell us where you're dialing in from. If you can hear a pinging sound in the background during the webcast, that is the sound of folks on the chat forum. Or either that or they're setting Mark some no doubt very tricky questions. Otherwise, finally from me, the next webcast in this series, which focuses on the future of food service in Asia Pacific. It's the final one in the series. It's also supported very kindly by Woodstone. Thank you to them. That will take place in mid-September. We don't have a confirmed date for that one yet. The details will be shared on fcsi.org and across our social media channels. Otherwise, today, let's focus on North America, and I shall hand over to Global Data's Mark Dempsey. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning to everyone in North America and Central South America. Good afternoon to everyone over here on a European time zone. Mike, I'll just make my my normal check. You can hear me okay and see my screen?
Yeah, Mike? I can hear you, Mark. That's good. That's good.
Yeah, good. Perfect. Okay, so off we go. So welcome back to anyone that has joined before for the EMEA and Latin America pieces. As Michael mentioned, this is a focus on North America, looking again at the continuing theme of trends and inspirations in a time of change. We will, of course, look at the changing world, the impact of COVID-19, continue the ideas of this changing world by looking at the changing industries, changing consumers, innovations and inspirations that can maybe help us all identify some new ways forward. And then the moving forwards from here, summary really to set up some good questions and some good discussion at the end of the session. It's been a challenging year for all of us in our industry. Back on the 6th of April, Howard Schultz, former CEO of Starbucks, said this: if we don't provide a backstop for the restaurants, I suspect we could see a situation in which approximately 30% or more of small independent retailer or restaurants never reopen. At the time, I think that was seen as absolutely worst case scenario. At the time, I think it was seen potentially almost as scaremongering. It's proven to be an exceptionally grounding and accurate view of the marketplace, and causes us all to take pause and identify how we should be acting differently to claw back some of the lost business and ensure that we act in a way that protects the food service marketplace moving forwards. So a few ideas on the way the world is changing, because the world has been changing regardless of this recent pandemic. Over the last few years, we've been seeing 1.5 million people per week being added to urban populations all around the world. Well, that dramatically changes how we live, how we act, how we shop, how we eat. One of the most important ways in which it changes our lives is the way that downtown locations, core central urban locations look. There's less and less space. There's, let's say, an increase in focus in convenience stores because the space simply doesn't exist for hypermarkets and supermarkets. What does that do? Well, that changes the way we're shopping. But if we think about what's happening in convenience stores today, huge focus in many convenience store formats on food service, of course. You can't really go into a convenience store today without finding hot coffee, premium bakery in the morning, moving to artisan sandwiches in lunchtime, and then even ready meals in the evening. So food service is really taking over everything about how we live, how we eat. Often I will talk about, for European, Asian, Australasian webinars, the fact that we're becoming slightly more North American. We're actually living in condos and apartments more. Of course, in all of the big metropolises around North America, condo living, apartment living is just a natural part, but it's becoming increasingly prevalent. Of course, what happens is that the spaces at the bottom of those condos are given across increasingly to large convenience stores, fast, casual, exciting new food service concepts, and that's very much going to continue. So placing big bets as a manufacturer, as a distributor, as an operator on winning in those urban environments is absolutely a safe big bet to be making, and it's absolutely aligned to a trend that we're going to be seeing moving forwards. Now, one of the things that we like to do at Global Data, and that I'm very passionate about personally, is bringing ideas about gold standard, what's happening out there in the world which is best in class. And with respect, I think many people are often quite surprised to hear me immediately call out Burger King. Well, if we look at Burger King's huge push in terms of gold standard marketing in the last 6 months, we see a few reasons as to why. Firstly, perhaps the very best piece of marketing related to coronavirus, the social distancing Whopper, the Whopper with triple onions that keeps others away from you. It's great. These are dire times. These are very, very dark times that we're going through. Literally a matter of life and death for millions of people. But there's no reason not to still leverage our values, leverage our ethics, have fun with our marketing within food service. It's exactly what Burger King have done there. But they've balanced it really nicely with this idea of, we understand that people still need to be very aware of value, very aware of spend, very aware of price. These are hard times. People very worried about job security, exceptionally worried about disposable income. And it's a great message here. Don't spend $5 a day on a latte. Spend $5 a month and get a coffee every single day. And then a best-in-class example from Brazil. At the back end of 2019, Burger King actually launching a series of TV commercials featuring a blind lead actor to really talk about their inclusivity as a let's say, a focused brand and trying to make sure that everyone, even those with disabilities, can see Burger King as a progressive operator. So thinking a little bit specifically about North America, an interesting development recently, if we think about not only the retail world, also the food service world, Italy opening up in Toronto. And in fact, what we've actually seen there is the expansion of this idea from Italy about really progressing with the restaurant part of Italy. So a really great question was asked in the Toronto press back in December. In a city with 7,500 restaurants plus 400 grocery stores, is there actually really even room for one more? Well, the answer was a resounding yes. And I think it speaks to the fact that in experiencing, let's say, premium food service, driving an experiential offering that crosses over between food service and retail is not only something that we've been seeing more of, but it's something which actually can really set the trend, can actually really drive sales growth over the next few years. Now, For those of you that know Italy, for those of you that have been in to the famous flagship stores, of course, in Chicago, New York, etc., as well as across Europe, you'll be very aware of the really great marketing, the best-in-class merchandising and an assortment mix. But what we've just recently been able to see in the last couple of weeks as Italy and Toronto has reopened is we've worked up an appetito. So this lovely piece of, let's say, marketing. We are reopening safely. You can trust us. You can get delivery if you're not yet wanting to come to us and be here in person with social distancing. Then we've actually started a delivery platform for you as well. So a really great concept to Italy, actually being really keen to, let's say, diversify and find new ways to get to market. So interesting to see that one progressing. Now, the food service market is very significant, of course, and it's been growing. There are very clear reasons to believe that the food service market is still worth a big bet, that the food service market is still a really great sector for us to be involved in and investing in. From 2018 to 2019, we saw the North American food service market grow by just under 3%. That's higher than it was in Europe, higher than it was in Latin America, and MEA, only second behind the recent growth in APAC. Now, we expect, of course, a significant blip in 2020, but global data projects that in 2021 and onwards, we should get back up to the same kind of levels. So 2.5% growth in food service in North America can really be captured next year and moving on from there. So reasons to believe in the marketplace. But we absolutely have to acknowledge the world has changed dramatically in 2020. There could be long-lasting effects possible. Just as of a couple of days ago, we are heading to 22 million global cases, around about 3.5% of which are fatal around the world. So this really is a position in which we see rapid change required in business models to adapt to not only lockdown, periods of restricted movement, but incredibly challenging times in terms of how we simply go to business. And while it may seem, let's say, slightly crude, slightly dark to be asking, is there an opportunity here? Well, yes, there is an opportunity here, and the most progressive companies, the companies that will win in the future, will be those that are asking right now, how many businesses will be left? How can I grow? How can I protect my business? Maybe the most progressive companies within food service will act quite aggressively in terms of mergers and acquisitions. Maybe the most aggressive companies will think very, very broadly about how do I adapt my business model? And certainly global data predicts that the winners in the next couple of years will be those that have adapted, that have acted aggressively. Because if we take this example from South America, just in the last couple of weeks, Alsea, a very significant restaurant operator across all of South America, it trades many of the world's biggest chains, has actually had to start closing stores. So Alsea is closing Starbucks outlets in Argentina, closing Burger King outlets in Argentina and Brazil and other countries too. They also run Domino's pizza outlets as an example. But where we see an operator having to simply remove cost, close stores in order to protect its business, we can be sure that we are facing very significant hard times. And while we all know it, sometimes it's helpful to see an image to prove it. So thinking very simply here, this is Global Data's latest take on Q2 2020 versus Q2 2019. And what we see is, very simply stated, in every single region, in every single food service channel, double-digit declines. Now, travel and accommodation are the worst hit in every region. That's unsurprising. Latin America is the second worst hit in terms of overall declines, actually just behind North America. So unfortunately for those dialing in from the North American food service industry, North America is the most challenged food service industry of all. That is led more by the US than Canada in terms of declines. Canada bouncing back a little bit more quickly in terms, I think, of consumer trust to go back into the stores. Certainly outlets seeming to open with more guidance maybe than can be directly contrasted to the US. Now, if we compare those overall figures to the sub-channels that exist within the restaurant industry, we can see a focus, if you like, on coffee and tea shops, full-service restaurants, ice cream parlors, quick-service restaurants. Now, in general, the restaurant industry is a little less hit than the food service industry overall, but we do still see some concerning themes. Latin America remains the second worst hit, with North America still the worst hit in terms of overall restaurant trade. But there's some better news if we start to look at some of the ways that we think recovery may happen. Coffee shops are generally seeing the smallest declines and fastest recovery. Now, why is that? Well, of course, not only does it feed many caffeine addictions, but more seriously, coffee shops are able to manage social distancing, possibly the best of all operators. Queuing outside, small, quick, easy to fulfill orders, being able to be managed. Simply taking away the seating area doesn't really damage the experience. You can continue your coffee on the go as you walk into the office or take it home with you. Quick service restaurants are also seeing faster recovery than the average. Again, more easy to manage social distancing, lower average prices, which of course is critical. So as we all on the line today start to think about how we can support the industry, how we can drive the industry forwards, it's likely those smaller ticket, better value, smaller cost, quicker missions that are going to really drive food service forwards. Now might not be the time to be investing heavily in fine dining, niche dining that requires longer dwell times, much higher ticket prices. That's not necessarily going to reassure the nervous consumer. Now, something very unique, let's say, to North America really is food service within malls, which of course has been a very, very significant play in terms of the overall retail and food service experience. Food service revenue in shopping malls, very concerningly, down about 55% June 2020 versus same time last year. As you can see, that's considerably worse than some of the numbers we were showing on the earlier page. As one snapshot example, one of the more famous malls, Scottsdale Fashion Square, normally absolutely packed during lunch times with diners. This is a week after reopening, as you can see. Little to no interest at all in the food service offering there. Concerning times if you work in retail and you need food service as a generator of income. So again, thinking about potential actions for those of us on the line today, how can we help not only the core food service outlets, but retail outlets as well that are dependent upon food service for extra revenue? Time to maybe in North America start thinking about shopping malls. So what's keeping consumers back? What's let's say some of the things that we can think about to help consumers be more comfortable with coming back into food service? Well, since the coronavirus pandemic really started to take weight around the world, global data has been tracking consumer perception in many countries around the world, including the US. This is the global view. We ask consumers, what kind of information would you like from brands during the coronavirus period? The number one most popular response, give me tips on personal health and well-being. So for everyone on the line today, whether you're an operator, a manufacturer, distributor, strategist, one of the most important things that the food service industry can be doing is helping consumers feel safe, feel healthier, focus on their well-being. That might come down to reassurances about social distancing, reassurances about mask wearing, reassurances about the beneficial foods that you have. Are they high in nutrients, high in vitamins? Are they high in immune boosting properties? Help consumers help themselves and feel safe is the clear message from this. And if you're a brand, then talk about the initiatives that you've been adopting. How are you securing the future of your business? How are you protecting jobs? How are you ensuring safety of food standards? Consumers want to hear this, particularly the nervous consumers, those consumers that are not yet sure about how safely they can revisit food service. Because when we speak to consumers about how concerned they are and how positive they are, in some countries, the message is loud and clear that consumers remain very concerned. So on the left-hand side, you can see where we ask consumers if they are extremely concerned about the global outbreak of coronavirus. Brazil, South Africa, USA, all seeing now increasing numbers of consumers saying, yes, actually, I'm really concerned. Now, a really concerned consumer is going to spend less, go out less. They're going to be cautious. They're going to look for value. They're going to look for ways to remain safe and to deal with their anxiety. And if we look at that in a slightly different way, consumers who actually expect the situation to improve in their country in the next month, this is interesting. We see, again, Brazil, South Africa, the USA, consumers becoming less certain that the situation is going to improve. And actually, for reference, from some of the very latest numbers we've got, I can see that the US numbers are actually getting progressively worse at the fastest rate of any of the countries that we study. So lots to do to reassure consumers that they can safely come back into food service. Now, I love this kind of initiative from Wendy's. It's becoming even more critical today. It breaks down fast food stereotypes. It increases trust. It increases transparency. It says, come and see how well we prepare your food, how safely we prepare your food. Come and sit and watch our kitchens. This is the kind of play that fast casual, premium steakhouses have been really adopting for many years now. And Wendy's are doing this to say, you can trust us. Now, I think we're going to have to see operators moving towards this level of transparency. I think it's a great initiative by Wendy's. It's to be applauded. And I think it can really drive trust into the food service marketplace. Be interested to know, I know there's nothing like the human connection, if you like, when you're able to stand in front of an audience and get a show of hands. So if I was in front of everyone today, I'd ask for a show of hands for how many people have heard of Creator, coming out of San Francisco. So this is an entirely automated, robot-led fast casual burger outlet. So every single burger that's created is created bespoke and made for you to your taste, to your flavor preference, to your ingredient preference by a robot. Now, innovation is great. I'm not sure the human touch can ever really be replaced, but it's good to see companies really striving to identify the next step in food service. I'm not sure this will take over. I'm not sure that we'll be faced with robots making all of our products in the future, but I just wanted to draw attention to this one. It's an interesting niche idea to keep an eye on in the food service space in the US. Probably more practically, food service outlets need investment to secure their futures. We wonder, again, for manufacturers who are on the line, technical agencies who are on the line, can this be really manufacturer-led? Can it be partnership-led? Diageo has really probably got the gold standard in terms of investment into food service with their $100 million recovery fund for the hospitality industry. And then we look around, for example, Latin America, and we see small groups of independent restaurants forming buying groups, forming new loyalty schemes to try to really identify a way to club together, come together as a community and save money, give themselves the best chance of remaining open and let's say succeeding into the future. So with that, let's say in our mind now as setting the scene for the overall industry, let's start to think about how industries are changing, consumers are changing, and some of those inspirations and innovations that might help us really make a difference. Well, one of the most important messages that I'd love to be able to give is that there is an absolute need for laser focus on the environment, on ethics. Around the world, these are global numbers, but this is absolutely true in North America. We study these consumer surveys across many countries around the world, and these numbers that you'll see here are true for the US and for Canada. So 81% of global consumers find living a sustainable lifestyle important or very important. That speaks to the fact that today's consumer, more than ever before, expects you as an operator, as a manufacturer, as a partner to the food service industry to help them live a sustainable lifestyle. They will be holding you accountable for packaging, sustainability, recycling, corporate social responsibility. And this number on the right-hand side is incredible. It's mind-blowing. Increasingly, consumers are telling us that they would focus more on sustainable lifestyle choices than increasing their income. So I don't think that would have been the case 10 years ago. I'm pretty sure maybe not even 5 years ago. But the environment, sustainability has become so critical. Consumers would rather find a way to live a sustainable lifestyle than increase their income. We need to think about that in every strategy that we develop for the food service marketplace. Now, food service can really offer us best-in-class examples of ethical positioning. So continuing the theme from the previous slide, 87% of global Gen Zs, so the youngest consumer, let's say 14 to 20-year-olds, essentially your consumer of the future, they tell us that companies have to make clear the values that they stand for. And there's a great example of that from within food service. It's why Shake Shack is doing this. They stand for something good. And I'll just read from this because it's worth capturing in detail. We stand for something good in everything we do. That means carefully sourced premium ingredients from like-minded purveyors that we admire and love. So Shake Shack is telling us candidly, if you want to support us, if you want to be a partner to us, if you want to produce food for us, manufacture with us, you have to have at least the values and ethical views that we have, if not better. Otherwise, we have no interest in working with you. So the way that the food service industry is going to go is that operators will look for people that can support every single part of their business from an ethics and a values standpoint. If you don't share Shake Shack's ethics, they won't work with you in the future. The choice is clear. Now, we've spoken a little bit about health. Consumer health is absolutely paramount. Consumer focus upon health is growing, and health solutions must be really front of mind. So what we know from recent consumer surveys, increasing numbers, 16% in fact, of global consumers proactively seek products which improve their health compared to a few years ago. So we're seeing now a position where it's pretty much 3/4 of global consumers actively seek out products to improve their health, improve their well-being. Now, here's another example where food service can learn from retail. It's a best-in-class piece of retail innovation. Kroger in the US, you'll all be very aware of their proactive stance on many topics, but really is here where they are best in class. So as part of Kroger's health and wellness online platform, they've developed an app called Opt Up. It provides nutritional information, products, offers replacement. So it helps you proactively pick, I'll have this product, not that product. I want to be on this diet, not that diet. And it helps you do that. And one of the things I love about this the most, it can actually be used at other retailers. So it's actually Kroger saying, we're not even just going to keep this to ourselves. We're going to help people's well-being wherever they are. I think it's a great best-in-class display of doing the right thing by the consumer. And of course, it migrates into food service. So we see a progressive, fast casual American chain, Piada, in a similar play to the Kroger app, really leveraging loyalty and health and wellness. So allowing you to proactively choose and customize the products that you want to order on an app that helps you be more health and wellness focused. And that really ties into these figures, this one actually from North America as an overall average. How appealing are products when they are customized to my individual health needs? Well, 70% of the population saying, yes, that's appealing. So what we mean by that is thinking more and more about every one of your customers as an individual. Individuals with specific needs for reduced salt, reduced fat, extra vitamins, gluten-free, etc., and showing how you can customize every meal, every day part, every solution to their needs, I think is going to become increasingly critical and a great chance to win. So meal occasions will change. Consumers' needs will change too. So under periods of lockdown, periods of restrictive movement, consumers have started to think differently, started to find new solutions, started to challenge the status quo. But probably the two most important takeouts I can bring you from this page, immune boosting menu items. So we all need to be thinking about adding the right superfoods, blueberries, kale, etc., into foods to help the immune system. A global pandemic has made literally billions of people think about, how do I be healthier? How do I stay alive? How do I survive? How can I make my family safer? And then also this idea of Instagram worthy takeout. We've all been guilty of sitting in a restaurant, particularly a trendy fast casual or a fine dining outlet, photographing the food, putting it on Instagram, showing our friends. Well, in a world that's now predominantly moved to takeaway or delivery, how can we all make sure that the food service world remains, let's say, aesthetically pleasing? The food turns up looking great. Things we need to start thinking about now that we hadn't really considered properly before. A really great example from Canada, Freshii, who I'm sure you're all aware of, has seen exponential growth in the last few years. A great line from the CEO recently: as our customers continue to work from home, our introduction now of a dinner-focused menu just felt natural and important to our business. So Freshii has probably cornered the market in many cities with an amazing, fresh, natural, organic start to the day: coffees, smoothies, salads for lunchtime, etc., etc. But now really shifting for the first time into new day parts because they've identified that consumers need them for a different reason now. They're either going out at different times, or they're, let's say, working in different ways, commuting at different times, working from home more predominantly. And Freshii has said, okay, our consumers are going to need us in the evening. What can we do? Well, we can find really great pre-prepared plates for them to ensure that they can get a great at-home food service experience. And this idea from Freshii is really best in class. I expect to see it translating and migrating around the world. Now, as we start to think about that theme of food service migrating into retail and vice versa, one of the most important themes and trends in terms of where people choose to eat or drink out is the availability of fresh, natural, organic products. So 7-Eleven, of course, in the US and Canada, as well as the Far East, has been focused for some time on being seen as more of a food service destination. Use 7-Eleven for, of course, its famous hot dogs, moving more and more into salads, burgers, etc., etc. But also trying to identify the right assortment mix. And they're learning from food service and they're adapting accordingly. So really bringing in this idea of Suja organic kombucha drinks. So it speaks to being fresh and organic. It speaks to well-being. It has probiotic content. It uses ginger for medicinal purposes, etc., etc. It's a great example of a retailer saying, the food service world is changing. I can learn from that. I can grab share of market from it. And right now, at a time where people are restricting their movement, knowing that they can go to 7-Eleven for a food service inspired product is only going to help drive 7-Eleven's food service sales. Now, talking of food service within retail, as I have done a few times, I want to really make sure that we're all aligned to the fact that there really is an opportunity for retailers to win with food service. A great example comes from Wegmans across the US, not only launching on-site items like the burger bar, but then really diving into different ethnic opportunities, sushi, Asian foods, subcontinent foods, Latin American meats. Really a great way to drive experience, drive loyalty. But what's it really doing? Well, it's increasing dwell time on site at Wegmans. It's literally stealing share away from the food service world, from other retailers. It's creating new loyal customers. It's leveraging that food service experience and ensuring if I have $10 to spend on food service after I've done my shopping, I might as well stick around and do it at Wegmans because the experience is great. It's like a food hall. I can go premium. I can look for value. This is exactly the way that we expect the retail world to move. So increasingly, all of us on the line today focused on food service have to be thinking more and more about the retail food service landscape and not just the traditional big food service players. Now, one of the things that I'm asked a lot at the moment in the COVID times is, are people simply going to head to value, head to the lowest price, head to the heaviest promotion? Are they going to turn their back on many of those trends and themes which have been driving food service? Well, it's fair to say that growth of food service recently has come from experience, premium, fresh, quality, really great engagement. And that will come back. It might take a temporary back seat, let's say, but it will come back. And it's where everyone on the line today should be placing their big bets, really ensuring that we focus upon those messages, those themes, those desire for human connection that we all have that will drive sales in food service. One of the things that we do and offer at Global Data is a series of study tours. Of course, we'll get those started again as soon as travel and being in groups is allowed and sensible. But this is from a study tour I led about 18 months ago back in New York City, a great fast casual operator called Dig. And I just love what they stand for. So we buy food from farms, we roll with seasons, we make meals from scratch. This speaks to the idea of we're making it better for you. We're making it personalized for you. We cook for you as a person. We serve mostly vegetables. Okay, we eat at a table. That might have to take a backseat for a little while. But as soon as we get back to the right ways of operating food service with social distancing, et cetera, where people can sit in, it's that kind of theme of sit down, take a break. Don't just rush back and have food at your desk. Don't just turn your phone back on. Relax and enjoy this food service experience. Allow it to be a great experience. Allow it to be healthy. That's really going to remain the future of food service, and we mustn't turn our back on it. So thinking about moving forwards, lots of discussion about change. Don't be afraid of change. Be afraid of staying the same, I think is a great, let's say, phrase for today. And the restaurant industry will change and it will need leaders. So, okay, let's hope it doesn't change this much where we literally all have to sit in bubbles, 2 of us in a restaurant at a time, protected away from everybody. We love to engage with other humans. We love to engage with food service. But we have to find the right ways to operate. Now, food service outlets are already getting creative to steal from retailers. Retailers over the last 6 months have been given the most incredible boost. They've been given the opportunity to get people home cooking, home baking. They've been given the opportunity to get people to test their foods, their own food service counters, their own ready meal solutions. And actually, here in the UK, Coke Brasserie has been incredibly proactive. It's a premium restaurant brasserie style chain, and they have been actually delivering their foods to you with instructions upon exactly how to cook it as if it was in a restaurant kitchen. Now, that kind of proactive work from food service outlets will help consumers get the trust that they need to come back to you because they've had a great experience from you during a challenging time. Something I saw in the US just a few days ago from Wahlburgers. What they've actually been trying to do is make sure, even at a time when people can't necessarily get in the numbers that they used to into a Wahlburgers store, they can still go and get that special sauce from retailers. So expect to see more and more of the idea of a food service operator franchising or selling its products to big retailers all around the world to ensure the brand stays present, to ensure consumers can still get that product. Again, best in class assortment activation here from Wahlburgers. I love the idea from Sobeys Urban Fresh. This is a couple of years old now, but when Sobeys Urban Fresh started to launch a partnership with Nutella Cafe, similarly, I think Nutella Cafe features very heavily in Italy, just to bring this 360 degrees. But food service-led theatre can be driven by partnerships. So whether or not you are working in the retail food service space or the standalone food service space, whichever channel that might be in, leverage strong brands, leverage strong partnerships. It can create that necessary point of difference that might be needed to ensure that the consumer picks you versus a competitor. And certainly in challenging times like we are in today, and like we will continue to be in for the next 6 to 9 months, without doubt, leveraging some of the world's strongest brands to help your operation is absolutely critical and can make the difference between success and failure. So, it can be created, new sales channels, new engagement potential, business remodeling, and then reinvigorating offerings. All 4 of those will allow you to stay strong, keep operating, steal share, and of course, hopefully continue to drive growth back into the food service industry. And just to really bring this full circle, let's remember to keep bringing the fun to food service. These are hard times. These are dark times, very challenging for all of us, however we work within the food service industry. Again, a great best-in-class example from Burger King. Let's keep bringing the fun. How do you social distance? You wear a 2-meter diameter crown of Burger King crowns on your head. Great best-in-class actioning of fun, experience, brand position. I think we can all learn from exactly the way that Burger King have tried to keep messaging throughout this whole period of time. So thank you once again for allowing me to walk you through the presentation. I look forward to the chance to take a few questions now. I will just finish with my favorite Chinese proverb. The best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is right now. And I guess that may never have been more true than right now. Thank you very much. And Michael, maybe over to you for some questions.
Excellent stuff, Mark. Thank you so much. That was absolutely packed with insight there. Could I trouble you just to take off the shared screen function there? We both go, there we go, wonderful. Perfect. Okay, Mark, we've had quite a few questions coming. In the first instance, lots of questions asking, folks asking how they can get hold of your presentation. What I will say on that front is that we will be running a story on this very webcast on the FCSI.org website. There will be an embedded video of the whole webcast in the story, but also Mark very kindly has offered to send people directly his presentation. So we will include Mark's details within the story, and I can connect you separately as well, so Mark can send you a copy of his PowerPoint. In the meantime, we have had a number of questions. We've had a number of observations as well. So an observation here from Wade, Kayla in the States. Mark, when you were talking about how there is an opportunity to leverage brands in stores, Wade has mentioned that Wahlburgers are now taking over a number of dining areas in the Hy-Vee grocery stores in the Midwest.
Oh, okay.
It strikes me as a very good example. On the question of retail itself, Marco in Brazil, he's a food service consultant in Brazil, he has asked, don't you think that a significant amount of meals will migrate to retail in the US? And I think that's probably before you started talking about the example of Wegmans, but I just wondered if you had any more kind of information on that, whether or not you see that as a pervasive trend.
Yeah, it's a great. Hi, hello again, Marco. Thanks for supporting the sessions. Absolutely, and in fact, if I was to put my finger on one big risk to the food service industry, it would be that some of the most proactive retailers will simply take this opportunity to steal share away from food service. As I mentioned, they've invested incredibly heavy in educating consumers about their foods. Not only ready meals, but the ingredients, how to home bake, how to home cook. I know that that's become a little bit less of a trend over the last few years, people looking more and more to frozen and chilled ready meals. But some of the most progressive retailers, I can think of Loblaws in Canada, Mariano's in particularly Chicago, but now increasingly across the US, Whole Foods, of course, educating consumers as to how to make the best use of home baking, home cooking. That's the single biggest risk really to the industry, is that consumers, let's say, have fallen in love with that. They've taken the opportunity to create great home experiences, particularly with kids involved, and that they simply see great value in not only the lower cost of buying it from a retailer and making it at home, but great value in the experiential value, and simply stealing away from food service. I certainly think, as I mentioned, fine dining is at the biggest risk of that. Hard for people to truly get that coffee bakery experience at home. So I think coffee and bakery, the more kind of sweet treat, caffeine treat, will remain in good growth and remain relatively safe. But that kind of lunchtime occasion, home meal occasion, dinner where you would be tempted to go out into food service, that really could be at quite some risk. So worth watching.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mark. Question here from Arlene, who's a consultant in New York City. She has said, I mean, obviously there was a number of slides in your presentation dedicated towards kind of health and well-being, as well as on the other side of things, kind of the success of brands like Wendy's and Burger King. Arlene's question is, in the US, fried chicken and other comfort foods were the highest selling items for takeout and delivery. It seems to be in conflict with the healthy organic demand previously growing before the pandemic. Do you think there's room for both directions?
Yes, great spot. Thank you. And I think that there will absolutely, without doubt, temporarily, and it's a little bit arbitrary, of course, but let's say the remainder of 2020 into January 2021, let's call it the short term, the next 6 months, there will be a focus on people being more careful, going into KFC rather than going into a premium fast casual chicken or burger outlet, as an example. Buying a McDonald's salad rather than going to a mixed or a chopped or a Panera, as an example. I think people have to be careful about their wallet now more than ever before. And to be candid, particularly in the US, people are exceptionally worried about job security, exceptionally worried about disposable income. And I think you will see a movement towards value. But both things can be true. You can see a move towards value while also seeing a need to absolutely protect the opportunity that comes from experiential, organic, artisan, fresh, premium products. I would suggest any manufacturer, any operator that takes their eye off the ball in terms of innovating with artisan, premium, experiential will lose out in the longer term. Focus on value, yes, but absolutely keep focusing on how to drive experiential products too.
Excellent answer. Thank you, Mark. Staying on that subject of value and also the hit on wallet, looking at from the other perspective, a great question here from Toby. He's saying, has there been a study on the concern or focus the consumer may have on making sure food service workers are making a living wage?
Wow, yeah, I see that one on the screen now. That is a great question. Not that I'm aware of. I'll need to take a look at that and maybe try and find a way through Michael or Director Toby to come back with an answer on that one. Great question. In this world of kind of communities coming together, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, etc., maybe that can really become a thing. I haven't heard of it. I haven't studied it, but I'll certainly look into it. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mark. Question here from my colleague Tina. She is citing a recent article. It was actually it was reposted in the New York Post, but it's got a lot of traction in the last week. It's an article that made a very gloomy prediction that COVID-19 will cause the end of New York City. 60% of restaurants would close, especially with people working from home across the country. How vital is a vibrant food service sector to the survival of our urban centres?
Yeah, I hadn't seen that. I've seen some fairly draconian, fairly worrying numbers about the effect potentially on high streets, particularly given lower tourism numbers for a couple of years, particularly given lower commuting numbers. I mean, not to kind of just take a poll of one, but I live about an hour and a half west of London. I haven't travelled up to London since March the 5th or 6th. Worked from home that entire time. When I just think about what I haven't spent parochially in coffee shops, sandwich shops, etc., it's quite scary when you add that up and then multiply that by the whole population. I don't think we know enough yet about what that could do really to general, urban centres, town centres, the high street in general. But I expect to see there will be a very significant hit on independent players before chains. Chains will generally have more security, investors that are happy to wait this out. Independents do not have either of those two luxuries generally. So I think what we may see is the independent coffee shops, independent burger shops, independent artisan salad shops, as an example, really being the first to go and possibly being replaced by KFC, McDonald's, Subway, Burger King, etc., who of course will have the reserves and the investment to bounce back. So we might see a shift towards chain versus independent in the short term. Hopefully, for the sake of all independents out there, that wouldn't be a long-term effect. But I think it's too early to say that the high street or the urban centre will cease to be, but I expect it to become generic.
Yeah. Great answer. Thank you, Mark. Question here from David. He said, how do governmental guidelines or restrictions vary between countries and their effect on market recovery. And he's thinking heavily regulated countries versus low regulation.
Yes, I think the one where I would say that there is a benefit to heavy regulation is in the opportunity to just be absolutely consistent. So the citizen, the customer, is left in no doubt whatsoever. Here is what we are doing as a community. When I go into this kind of outlet, here's what I will do. When I go into this kind of outlet, here's what I will do. Denmark is a really great example of that. I think that the reassurances that makes to the consumer is it allows them to say, I know I can be safe within this bubble. I can be safe within this way of working, this way of interacting with food service or with retail, and to let's say extend that hypothesis. I would probably suggest that in the countries where there has been less absolutely consistent messaging, unfortunately, the US would be one of those. Consumers are left with quite high anxiety levels because they're not necessarily certain from one state to the next, one city to the next, what I'm necessarily going to do. How do I be safe here? I'd suggest everyone looks at New Zealand, everyone looks at Denmark, everyone looks surprisingly maybe at the Czech Republic. 3 countries, and of course Germany was able to be right on top of this from the very start. But Denmark and New Zealand particularly, the level of consistency of response, consistency of guidance, I think it's aspirational for all other countries.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Well, this is in no way a current affairs or political webcast, and we've so far managed to avoid politics on this. Let me just ask a question without getting too in the weeds of it. In the US in particular, why are election years impactful on the industry anyway, let alone in a sort of pandemic situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think consumer confidence, wanting to feel great about ourselves, great about the economy, great about the enjoying ourselves in the way that we want to enjoy ourselves, is critical. And I think that, without getting into who is saying what to who at any occasion, one of the great divides that political parties can take is times are either good or times are really, really not good. And I think that food service, interestingly, could be a really, in a nutshell, almost an illustration of, are times good or not? Do I trust that I have job security? Do I trust that I have some disposable income this month? Do I feel I want to, it's my 10th wedding anniversary coming up. Do I want to take my wife out to a Morton's steakhouse? Or actually, do I want to get something in, like want to get takeaway? Or do I just want to maybe get something from the local supermarket? So I think at a time when a consumer is thinking, I'm not going to go and spend $100 in Morton's, I'm actually just going to stay home and play it really, really safe. I think food service becomes an interesting illustration of consumer confidence. Yeah. And as you head towards an election, if people are simply not comfortable to spend, to treat, to reward themselves, to interact in food service in the way that we have, I think it becomes a really interesting hypothesis about the way in which an election could go, the way in which a consumer base feels comfortable or not.
Absolutely. Always a very interesting bellwether for what's going on out there. Mark, we've got about 5 minutes left and we've suddenly had about 5 more questions. So let me if we can do these relatively quickly. Okay. Another question, which is a very interesting one. He said there's a movement in most American cities to remove tipping from the equation in table service restaurants. It's been driven by the need to pay back of house workers on a par with what front of house is making. To accomplish this, restaurants are instituting a service charge or raising prices. Any advice on how to get the consumer to understand this?
Well, I mean, tipping is an unbelievably emotive topic anyway. I think that the 2 points that I would raise there. I think customers in certain food service industries like to tip. I think it is a way of rewarding the overall experience. I think it is steeped in heritage. It's been happening for decades and decades. It almost seems like a way of helping the server. It's part of the interaction. So I think removing tipping full stop needs to be done with very, very clear messaging. I mean, similar to the answer about COVID, make sure the messaging is absolutely clear, absolutely consistent. Ambiguities will cause very significant problems. So whether or not it's the right thing to do ethically, whether or not it's the right thing to do for the benefit of each of the members of the wait staff, each of the members of the backroom staff, my advice would be the messaging has to be absolutely crystal clear and consistent across the whole industry.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. Question here from John in Canada. He said, as consultants, how do you see us assisting in the planning of new facilities?
Facilities as in
new projects, new food service projects, new builds.
Yeah, I think the consulting industry can really step up here and be bold. I've not experienced really a time in the last 10 years where there is so much hesitation, so much confusion as to the right way forward. Now is the time to really take those big 3 or 4 consumer trends and help manufacturers, help operators win with them. If people are nervous, tempted to move away, tempted to take a low cost option rather than investing as much as they ideally would, if they're tempted to play it safe rather than be bold, I think the consulting industry can play a role here of saying, here is how you win. Let's go. Let's place our big bets and win in the industry. Now more than ever, I think the role of the consultant is not to sit on the fence, hedge bets, but is to be bold and help people make the right choices.
Great stuff. Thank you, Mark. Question here from Karen. She said, any thoughts on why the mid-afternoon day part is the one with the most growth in the US at this time?
That's a very interesting take. I must say, I had been thinking for quite some time that breakfast was still the largest day part in the US. So that one is news to me. I'll look into that one. Breakfast had been very experiential, driven by people really moving into kind of more artisan, bakery, European style bakeries, much more, let's say, premium coffees. I know breakfast has been really booming. Karen, if you don't mind, I think I will look into that one and try and come back to you on email, Mike, if we've got Karen's email. That's a really interesting one to me, but it slightly throws me off track, as I must say, I would have thought it was still breakfast, but I will look into it and come back to you.
I will connect you both. Thank you, Mark. Question here from Sojo. She works a lot on education projects on colleges and universities, schools. And she said, with the trend of working from home or education at home on the rise, how do you see consultants helping in planning for food services on campuses specifically?
Well, I mean, again, I think one of the biggest risks there, just from a little bit of knowledge about the way that American university campuses or high school campuses are going back, again, with very little consistency. But that's, to be fair, true across Europe as well. It's going to be about allowing for experiences to continue to happen. Food service, again, hospitality as well on university campuses is about experience. Maybe that becomes more about outside. I think one of the things that consumers feel, whether this is actually scientifically proven or not, is that maybe outside feels safer than inside. Fewer surfaces to touch, maybe a little bit more transient, easier to move around. Maybe things like food trucks, events, food fairs as an example, rather than traditional sit-down campus-style restaurants, canteens, cafeterias, etc. Maybe we have to think about how we create more of an experience that helps people feel safer while still allowing people to enjoy their overall community gathering, let's say.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Question here from Stuart. He said, do you think that lowering the drinking age to 18 from 21 will stimulate growth for bars and restaurants in the US?
Wow, thanks for that, Mike. Be careful what you wish for.
Okay, let's leave that one there. Question here from Jeff. Do you see a growing trend for the Euro automat food service concept being a viable future trend?
I'm not sure I understand the reference. Hang on, I can see the question there. Do you see a growing trend for the Euro
Automat? I wonder if that might be something we could extend into looking at. Will we see more automation and robotics? You mentioned that excellent example of Creator in San Francisco. More automation and robotics in food service.
Oh, okay. So Jeff, excuse me if I get the wrong end of the stick there, but if we are talking about automated,
vending machines, maybe that's referring to vending machines.
Yes, I certainly think that there might be a move towards vending. I thought that was going to go in the direction of ghost kitchens or robotic kitchens, that kind of thing. Vending machines, yes, absolutely. And I think there's an opportunity here for people to really move on with slightly more premium products. So the traditional issue with vending machines is it's basically candy bars, sodas, etc. And anything other than that is viewed as likely to be low quality. So salads from a vending machine are generally seen as being very high in preservatives, etc., as are sandwiches. Is there a way to move towards a farm fresh or an organic or a guaranteed 1 day shelf life fresh product from vending machines, or particularly improving the quality of hot beverages, soft beverages from vending machines? I think people will feel naturally safer if interacting with a vending machine rather than interacting with 2 or 3 people. That may be a short-term win. Again, vending machines isn't necessarily going to be the future of food service. It might help people feel safer now. Although I can see, actually, Jeff has just clarified, potentially a walk-up dispenser with a ghost kitchen behind. And we're absolutely going to see in the whole food service industry around the world movements towards ghost kitchens. In fact, a UK example, in a suburb of London, Shake Shack have opened a ghost kitchen just purely to deal with the demand from delivery, so online ordering. You can't go to it. You don't know you're ordering from it. You can't go and pick it up. It's just simply churning out burger after burger after burger to meet the demand. And I think, vending, ghost kitchens, automated kitchens, absolutely, we may see that increasingly.
That's a lovely segue to a question from Luis from Mexico. He said, do you believe the growth of ghost/cloud or virtual kitchens will drive a more pronounced negative effect in the survival of traditional food outlets after COVID?
Mike, would you just say that again for me, please?
Yeah. Do you believe that the growth of ghost kitchens will drive a more pronounced negative effect in the survival of traditional food outlets after COVID?
Yeah, well, yes, I think that's a really great kind of reading between the lines, Luis. Yes, absolutely, because of course the only people that can make the ghost kitchens are those with the very significant investment, those with the millions of dollars already in the bank. So the likes of Shake Shack. I would expect that is a potential downside. It is a potential risk. The smaller independent, let's say mum and pop, family, local, small independent simply cannot compete with that kind of scale. Now, will that by itself lead people to stop going there? Probably not. They might see a downtick, but they should still be able to retain a strong, loyal consumer base. And that's in the marketing, that's in the messaging, that's in the kind of the magic trick of ensuring that consumers love the experience they get from you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mark. That is, we've just gone over the hour mark there. So that is, I'm afraid, all we have time for today. I'm sure all of you who've logged on today would like to join me in thanking Mark Dempsey from Global Data on behalf of FCSI for a wonderfully insightful and comprehensive presentation. Thank you, Mark. As I said, this story will appear on the FCSI website in a couple of days, and we will post the video, and Mark will also be able to send the presentation to you. I will connect you as well if you're interested. Obviously, there are still so many hurdles for this industry to get over, but it's great to see some positivity and so much resilience out there, certainly in North America, from this sector. I'd like to thank Woodstone and Unux and Multi-Terrier for their very much valued support. I'd also like to thank you all for registering. I do hope you can join us next month for our final webcast in this series on the future of food service in Asia Pacific. Details to follow on that one once we confirm the timing. Otherwise, thank you again to Mark. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.